Greetings! My name is Brad Hessel, and I am the Libertarian and Forward Party candidate for Senate 18 in North Carolina in 2024. So, I have a Democratic opponent and a Republican opponent, and all of us have proposals for improving healthcare, education, the economy, all the stuff folks care about here in North Carolina. My proposals are the best, of course, but that's not what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about something that my opponents are not talking about. So one of the reasons I got in, actually the main reason I got into this race, is I am very unhappy with the current toxic political climate that we're all experiencing. We got candidates who are attacking each other rather than talking about policy and issues. Some candidates are even attacking their opponents' supporters. So I know this is a national issue. It's not something that we can solve all by ourselves in North Carolina, but there are some electoral reforms that we can make here in North Carolina that I think will make our lives better in this respect. And the one I want to talk about today is instant runoff voting, or otherwise known as ranked choice voting. So in North Carolina today, we have plurality voting, and the way that works is you go into the voting booth and you fill out the oval for the candidate of your choice for each office, being very careful not to color outside the lines. You were taught that in kindergarten, of course. Then they total up all of the ovals for each candidate for each race, and whoever gets the most filled out ovals is the winner. You don't even need to win a majority. In 2020, we had several candidates running for president, and the winner did not get 50% of the votes, but he got more than anybody else, and that was the way it works in plurality voting. That was the winner. So, with ranked choice voting, it's a bit different. Instead of filling out ovals, you actually can rank all of the candidates running for each office in order of your preference: 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. Now, if it's a two-candidate race, it's not going to make any difference. Ranked choice voting, plurality voting, it's going to come out the same way. Whoever gets the most votes is going to win. But if you have 3 candidates running or more, and this year we have 5 candidates on the ballot for president, it could make a difference. So the way it works, you do your thing, and then the vote counters look at the ballots, and if somebody gets 50% plus 1 first place votes, that candidate is the winner, and that's the end. But if nobody gets 50% plus 1, then what happens in our hypothetical example is that the last place candidate, the 5th place candidate, is eliminated. And they look at all of those ballots of from voters that voted for that eliminated candidate and see if they picked a second choice. And like I said, you don't have to pick a second choice, but most voters would. Those votes are then reallocated to one of the remaining 4 candidates, depending on who the voter picked as their second choice. Once again, they count them up. Does somebody have 50% plus 1? If so, that's the winner. If not, then the new last place, 4th place candidate in this case, gets eliminated, and they do it again, and they keep going until somebody gets a 50% plus 1 majority to win the race. So, this is a great deal for you guys, right? Because you can vote for anybody you like. You don't have to worry about whether they can actually win or not. If somebody gets 50% plus 1 in the first round, it wouldn't have made any difference who you voted for. The outcome would have been the same. And if somebody doesn't get 50% plus 1 in that first round and your favorite candidate is eliminated, well, guess what? You still have a say in how the election comes out, assuming, of course, that you've picked a second choice. So, that's cool, but that's not really why I like ranked choice voting. There's actually 3 reasons I like ranked choice voting. And the most important one is that it gives all of the candidates an incentive to reach out beyond their 35 to 40% base of people that are going to vote for me no matter what, right? So, in a plurality system, just talking to your base, that might actually be a good strategy. You maybe pick up a few undecided votes, and you end up with more filled out ovals than anybody else, and you win the election. You don't even need a majority, as was proven in 2020, right? But in a ranked choice voting system, you know from the get-go that you need 50% plus 1. So you've got to be thinking, I've got 40% in my pocket, but how can I get an additional 10% plus one voter to pick me? Not necessarily as a first choice, but at least as a second choice or a third choice. And if my strategy is just to talk to my 40% base, and I'm basically insulting all the other 60% of the voters, right? That's probably not going to go well for me. So it doesn't force candidates to be more moderate and reach out, but it certainly gives an incentive to all the candidates to do. And for those who actually follow through on that, it gives them an advantage. So the second thing that I like about ranked choice voting is you need to have a majority to win. Hey, this is a democracy. That's the way it's supposed to work, right? So that 2020 example, that winning candidate had pretty close to 50%. And if there had been a second round, probably would have gone over the hump. So that's not really a horrible example, but we have plenty of horrible examples in North Carolina of the way plurality voting works. In primaries, the criterion is 30% plus one. So if you have multi-candidates running for a seat or a position, you can have the winner of the election be somebody that 65%, 68% of all the voters voted against. How is that democratic? We have a guy on the ballot this year running for state house who won his primary with 23% of the vote, right? That was a freak occurrence because the runoff, if you don't have somebody with 30% of plus one, it isn't automatic. It has to be requested by the second place finisher. And in this particular case, the guy that finished second decided he didn't want to bother with a runoff. So there's a guy on the ballot who 77% of everybody voted against. This is not a good system, folks. So the third thing I like about ranked choice voting, and as a libertarian, I'm not a big fan of spending taxpayer dollars unnecessarily. Actually, I don't like spending taxpayer dollars at all. But so runoffs, when we do run them, they're just as expensive as the primary. As the general election, right? But hardly anybody comes out. Like maybe 10% of the voters come out for a runoff election. They're very unpopular. You can have the winner of the runoff election get fewer votes than the loser got in the original election, just because the turnout drop-off is so huge. So getting rid of runoffs is really, really a good idea, of actual runoffs. Now, those are all the reasons that I like ranked choice voting, and I think it would be good to have in North Carolina, but I need to say kind of an inside baseball thing about implementing it, which is that the North Carolina General Assembly, as currently implemented, is not going to vote for ranked choice voting for North Carolina General Assembly seats or for the Council of State, any statewide races, congressional, U.S. Congress, whatever. They're really happy with the way things are, and they're not going to rock the boat, okay? So what I am specifically proposing is that we implement ranked choice voting as an option for counties and municipalities for their local elections. We're a Dillon Rule state, which means that those counties and municipalities can't just go and do ranked choice voting on their own. They have to have permission, basically, from the North Carolina General Assembly. And I think the General Assembly would be willing to entertain that idea. It would clearly be helpful to some of the municipalities and counties where they have multiple candidates running and people do get elected with way less than 50% of the vote, which is, not a good thing. So if elected, that's what I would propose. I do have a couple of other ideas for electoral reform. I'll put links to those in the comments. And if you want to read more about my healthcare, education, and economy great ideas, feel free to go to my website, electbradhessel.org. Thank you, and this is Brad Hessel, and I approve this message.